Settle down, brother. This is the Quarter Report powered by enca.com. South Africa is a movie. Welcome to the watch party. Donald Trump, the evil knickknack, the demented Nazi, the Dorito dictator is speaking on South Africa's name again. He seems to have forgotten how thoroughly he and his minions were exposed for talking about, believing, and spreading lies about South Africa just a few months ago, and how thoroughly all of the nonsense that they spewed in that meeting was proven to be nonsense. Seems to have forgotten all of that, and is now speaking badly on South Africa's name again, having said that no US officials will come to Johannesburg in the next few weeks for the G20 summit. We're going to talk about all of that, and we're going to specifically talk about this bizarrely toxic, special in a bad way relationship that Donald Trump and his minions have with South Africa, and why South Africans oscillate between hating Donald Trump and just laughing at him, because truly that man is a laughing stock in this country. And for those of you who are now watching this show, who are not from South Africa and wanting to know what all the fuss is about, you're about to learn. But for those South Africans joining us once again to process the wildness of this country, we're going to recap and particularly talk about the significance of the G20, the mess and the weirdness unfolding across the country around the G20. We have a lot to catch up on from an absolutely mad just under 2 weeks in South Africa and involving South Africans around the world. What I would like to say, though, for those of you who are watching, I'd like to start by congratulating my brother James on the birthday present he got for me, which is a beautiful set of Audio-Technica headphones, finally retiring my iconic headphones myself that James has been complaining about basically as a brand pillar for the last handful of months.
For anyone who has had any exposure to Daniel Corder, you will know that he is one of the most stubborn people in the entire world.
Oh, yeah.
So when Dan bought the original pair of headphones,
now being shown on screen,
about
RIP.
10 years ago.
Look at these warriors. Look at how hard they've worked for us.
They worked very hard and they were good for about 7 of the 10 years. But for the last 3 years, they have been actively defective, and I have been subjected
They haven't.
They have. I have been actively campaigning to have them released because I am the one who has to wear them on all of these episodes.
Yeah.
And I did made a huge effort. I coordinated a whole bunch of people to buy these beautiful brand new pair. Yeah. And let me tell you, they are delish.
Yeah.
They are clamping effectively on my ears. I can't hear your raw sound. I can only hear what's coming through the podcast equipment. I feel so good right now. And in my defense as well, these are beautiful headphones. You listen to music, you listen to podcasts, you're going to use those. You're going to use these to listen to that. This is good for you.
It's so funny that for the last 24 hours since you gave me those, you pretended those birthday headphones were for me.
They are for you.
They are so clearly for you. Let's talk about it. Donald Trump posted on, although I'm sure Trump fans will say he truthed, which is like, that's like fetch in Mean Girls. Stop trying to make it a thing. It's not going to happen. But he truthed, he social media'd, quote, "It is a total disgrace." In fact, your Trump impression is much better than mine, but we'll save that for later. "It's a total disgrace that the G20 will be held in South Africa. Afrikaners, bracket, people who are descended from Dutch settlers and also French and German immigrants," so at least he's learned something in the last 9 months, "are being killed and slaughtered and their land and farms are being illegally confiscated. No US government officials will attend as long as these human rights abuses continue. I look forward to hosting the 2026 G20 in Miami in Florida." The Americans were actually going to send a delegation, just not Trump. Vice President J.D. Vance, and notorious, let's just say, couch advocate. He was going to be coming down, but is now not going to be coming down. In fact, apparently there's just going to be no senior officials at all, and maybe not even U.S. Embassy in South Africa officers will rock up. And then his Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, said, "I applaud his decision to not waste taxpayer dollars sending our diplomats to the G20 while this heinous violence continues." Very serious. So for those of you who still don't know, the G20 or Group of 20 is an organization of some of the most powerful and important industrialized countries in the world, economic powerhouses. They were set up in the late 90s after apparently the Asian financial crisis of 1997-1998 as a forum for the finance ministers, central bank governors, and also now political leaders to get together to talk about their economic prospects and the kind of macroeconomic state of the planet. to try and avoid major financial crises from happening again. The goal is to create global economic stability so that financial crises like the Asian financial crisis and more recent ones don't cause massive loss of wealth, massive destruction of industries, and massive upset and destabilization of everyday people's lives. But it's now evolved into a bunch of other things, right? So trade, climate change, sustainable development, health, agriculture, energy, environment, climate change, and anti-corruption. And I mean, that all does make sense because all of those are interwoven into economic stability. All of those are interwoven into, I mean, broadly, if you think about economic stability, you can just think of it as the fate of the planet and the people who live on it. So South Africa is hosting the G20. We've been having events across the country the whole year. In Johannesburg, it's really been extraordinary. As I said, I got back from France yesterday. And if I had one prayer or blessing for you watching, it would be, may your house be on a G20 route. Because those are the only houses and roads that are experiencing service delivery right now. They are panicking. I was coming into town and they were like repainting the lines. They were closing lanes on Empire Road so that they could just wash stuff. They were painting over graffiti. They were pulling weeds out of the cracks. There are now these big statements about please stop like knocking over our traffic lights, which have been happening for years. Like, please stop driving so badly that you do that because we really need at least one road from OR Tambo International Airport to town to be nice enough to pretend that we have a functioning city hosting the G20 in front of all of these major leaders.
I saw a beautiful scene the other day where I was driving on Jan Smuts, which is, for those who don't live in Johannesburg, like a big major main road that runs through the suburbs, the northern suburbs.
All the way to town.
All the way to town. And it's one of the roads that they're going to use. And the center island is paved. And there were just, there must have been about 15 people like sitting there on their hands and knees with little like utensils, like
little chisels.
Yeah, cutting through. And I was driving up this hill and I saw them all on the right. And I was like, oh, that's great. Government's employing people and they're fixing this stuff. And I just looked up at the top of the hill and there were just all the traffic lights were out. And it was just the foreground and the background. And really the term rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic came to mind.
Polish a turd, it's still a turd. What movie is that from? Polish a turd, it's still a turd?
I think it's just a phrase.
I feel like it might be Jim Carrey.
No, I think it's just a phrase.
I feel like that's from somewhere.
In the interim, I do want to say that one of my favorite lines that I've ever heard was Robin Williams on the Graham Norton show, where he just said, I'm going to be on you like shit on Velcro.
Okay, so why has this Trump announcement gone so far, been so surprising, been girls so confusing? Donald Trump has been pushing an explicitly white supremacist agenda in the United States of America through ICE raids, through trying to remove any presence of black officials or officials of color in major government departments, through going after and vilifying people of color across the country. Most recently, in the last few days, I saw reporting on the way back from France that the US state has quietly removed a memorial to black service army men from a major cemetery that's supposed to honor the sacrifices of people. And Donald Trump's narrative has always been wink, nudge, we want to make America great again, which means whiter and more dominated by white people. Now, if you're upset with what I just said, you're not going to like the rest of this video. But it just is what it is. And it's very easy to see that from countries where white supremacy has been government policy, incredibly effective government policy for a long time, colonialism and then apartheid. We South Africans know white supremacy when we see it. Something that happened late last year into this year when former South African Elon Musk, he basically became the president of the United States of America for 2 months, unelected, by ghostwriting everything that Trump said, is that Donald Trump started to go after for South Africa for allegedly creating an environment within which there's terrible race-based persecution, specifically against white farmers and specifically against Afrikaners. And that culminated in Trump saying that they were not going to come to the G20 because of this heinous acts of violence. It culminated in different moves within the American government to sanction individual government officials within, or like who they believe were part of the problem, obviously overwhelmingly black officials from the African National Congress. It culminated in a refugee program. And if you want another example of white supremacy, Donald Trump's government has actively worked to shut down all refugee programs for people of color coming from war-torn disaster zones where you actually, like, there are real refugees. They have to flee to survive, and is instead giving free plane tickets to the United States of America to Afrikaners, white Afrikaners in South Africa. And just to show you how farcically, stupidly, afactual, fact-free nonsense, delusional hallucination took too much ayahuasca on the weekend, like the concept of Afrikaner refugee, there being Afrikaner refugees or white people in South Africa being downtrodden enough, their target, the US government, was to carry across thousands of alleged desperately trying to survive white South African Afrikaners. They've only been able to attract hundreds, and most recently they booked a flight, 50 seats on this plane flight for any white Afrikaners who want to go to the promised white supremacy motherland and escape the hell zone that is South Africa, and only 3 seats were filled of 50. Because when there's a humanitarian crisis and an active war and people are being hunted down and violently murdered and slaughtered and assaulted, you know what they really often like to do is not take a free plane flight to another country.
I know Donald Trump is not the most successful and effective mathematician, but a 6% ROI on your investment is extremely poor. 6%!
Wow.
And this is the other thing, is like there are often arguments about like, maybe people couldn't make it, and it's like, nonsense. No, the government, the American what's it called, embassy,
they organize
facilitating this whole thing. All they have to do is give up their 5-bedroom house and their mining company and their mum, and then get on the plane.
And what James is referring to there was in the initial batch of Afrikaner refugees who went across. There were people who were leaving behind businesses and cars and dogs, and in one case, a 5-bedroom house, including their own mother. Again, a classic refugee move. Leave your mother behind while you go to another country to save yourself from the impending doom. And I'll say the obvious, but like South Africa, 7% of the population is white. Like half of the major powerful management positions and employment positions in the country are not just white people, but white men. White people have a record-breakingly low unemployment and a record-breakingly high average wealth. And you struggle to find any white people who are genuinely struggling to the extent that many black South Africans are, and South Africans of color, because of historic and current failings and explicit oppression, bigotry, and extraction by the apartheid and colonial governments, and explicit incompetence by the modern South African government. And so it's just absolutely deranged and farcical. But the reason why this became so personal for South Africans is that Donald Trump, he is the president of the United States of America, and his then South African ghostwriter, Elon Musk, were spewing absolute lies about the country. But not just lies, not just disinformation or misinformation, not just stuff that was so patently, painfully, obviously false, but that it was, frankly, there are few more offensive things in South Africa than thinking, the white people are having it tough. The white people are having a bad time. Because, one, it's so patently not true. 2, we're only 31 years out of a system of oppression and extraction that made white people so extraordinarily, inordinately wealthy and privileged at the expense of black South Africans and South Africans of color. And still, 31 years into democracy, that is overwhelmingly the case. And white people were not expected to really apologize for what they did, face up to the fact that they voted for, aided, abetted, and supported the apartheid state and all the benefits it gave them, and have been able to hold on to literally all of their wealth. So it is so galling and so offensive that a South African like Musk would use Twitter and other places to spread such lies, such disinformation, platform people like that Twatterbas account that pretended to be an oppressed, attacked white Afrikaans farmer, but was actually a guy living in a cute seaside town near Cape Town, running his parents' guest house or something like that, just spewing total lies. And it's the deepest level of offensive to do that. And plus the fact that the US has now tried to use its political and economic weight to punish South Africa, to penalize us, to try to hamstring certain of our elected officials, to try to undermine and threaten certain of our economic relationships and trade relationships with countries around the world. And fundamentally, which is something that the US loves to do, undermine the genuine democratic processes and political will, the will of the people, the votes and choices of the people in another country. Because sure, the African National Congress did historically badly in the last election, but they still got 40% of the votes. That's 2 out of 5 voters. They were still just under twice as large by vote share as the next biggest party in the country. And President Cyril Ramaphosa and his administration, therefore, although it is a power-sharing agreement in the Government of National Unity, it is explicit that the majority of voting South Africans chose that party and that leader as their leader. So for another country to come along and try to undermine that process, to try to sanction our elected officials, spread disinformation, and try to literally weaken the ruling party in favor of other smaller interest groups is completely galling and deeply insane.
We are also just such an easy target for Trump. He's an anti-globalist. He doesn't believe in traditional diplomacy. He believes in like Cold War bullying diplomacy. And he's been pretty explicit about that in terms of his tariffs and in terms of the way he's dealt with the EU and China and all these other factors. So we are kind of a perfect
punching bag.
We're a perfect, we're a perfect combination of different factors that he can easily attack and attempt to control. But I think the reason why it's hitting so hard now is not just because of the G20, because we've been asking this question for months, and it's been pretty clear that they weren't coming for months. Like, since the beginning of the year, that this question has been asked, is he coming? And since the beginning of the year, it's been pretty clear that he's not going to come.
But J.D. Vance was coming 2 days ago.
Sure.
The deputy president. So that's different from the White House meeting, right? Because at the moment before the White House meeting, we thought they were never coming, and they've kind of forgotten about us since. So I think this is a significant change.
But what I'm saying is the reason why this is hitting hard now is because we always had a sense that they were at least not happy to come to Joburg, which, you know, if you've read any reports about the way the potholes are going and stuff, I don't blame them. But I think it was post the meeting with Ramaphosa in that showdown with the video and all that kind of stuff.
And the golfers, don't forget the golfers. Ernie Els played a crucial role, the Big Easy.
Gary player.
Yeah.
We thought that we'd dealt with it. But I think the key with Trump is he has a very good understanding of narrative and how to affect narrative. I think far more Americans in particular have heard his allegations against South Africa rather than the fact-checking that was done in that room and subsequently. And you see a whole host, oftentimes it's like Al Jazeera and newsrooms that are outside of America, but you see a whole bunch of focus again now on, you know, fact-checking this lie. It's a lie. It's not happening. This white genocide is not happening. We heard it from the agriculture minister, John Steenhuisen, in the room. Trump heard that and he decided not to hear it, or decided not to take it on. And I think that is what is most frustrating about the situation, is that there is just a complete lack of commitment to dialogue. Yeah. He is choosing what to do and what to take on. So I personally just think we should just go, okay.
Yeah.
You do you. We have our relationship with the EU now. We have our relationship with China. Like, America, if you don't want to play ball and you don't want to engage with us in good faith, let's just leave it.
Totally. Bunch of things to add. So all of the people who worked so hard to convince America that there was this terrible alleged thing happening in South Africa, like AfriForum, Carly Creel, and all of those, coming out in the last 2 days being like, no, we never said there was a white genocide in South Africa. But you winked, nudged hard enough, and this is now the consequence of it. So that is in and of itself, like, I mean, obviously when I went on Piers Morgan, and Piers Morgan was shocked to discover that Ernst Roots wasn't even going to argue that there was a white genocide, or even a genocide of specifically farmers or specifically Afrikaners in South Africa. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that I think what's so galling about this is Trump just like completely ignoring everything that went down in that meeting and the way that he was shown up and his people were shown up to go back on this idiotic talking point. And a pattern that we discovered and talked about a lot in the first 6 months of the year was whenever Trump had a problem locally, bad jobs numbers, bad economic indicators, Jeffrey Epstein, he would immediately then post about South Africa because it was an easy look over there redirect tactic. And he did it month after month after month. And it was almost predictable. It was like, Trump's going through a difficult thing. He's going to now do a redirect. I think this time it's not that. I think this time it's because the G20 is coming up. But the other thing is, the reason why specifically this is so useful for Trump's fodder is because he's desperately trying to find an oppressed group of white people. That's the white supremacist thing, right? The humiliation of the white supremacy argument is that they can't. The humiliation is trying to prove that white people are under threat and under attack and being oppressed, and like what they're doing to us now are just as bad as what like we did to black people historically, and like it's like inverted and reverse racism and all of that. The humiliation is that the reality is that it's so painfully obviously untrue that they can't show the evidence required to validate this pissy complaint. But in South Africa, this is the closest that they've got in the whole world. In the whole world, this is the closest that they've got, is that there are justice reforms and redress policies that try to help black people in such a way, and women and people who are disabled, such that there is not an advantage, but a lack of disadvantage, that there's a level playing field when it comes to jobs and economic and work opportunities. But this is the closest that they've got, which is why it keeps coming back to them trying to pretend South Africa is something that it's not, so they can justify a broader white supremacist notion that they're being replaced and attacked and undermined.